Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Friday, July 5th, and we are on the Americas account. Starting a little bit late today because I took July 4th off, and that messed with my sleep schedule. It required me to actually be awake when normal people are awake, instead of doing most of my recording in the late evening or afternoon. Or late afternoon, early evening. So we'll roll that. Let's see. We need a hunter victory, and at some point we need to play 30 shaman cards. And we don't have the tavern brawl that needs to be done for this account, but we will need to do the tavern brawl for the European account today. I believe Anime Expo has begun, or is about to begin, and that has caused us to start to get some more Japanese games that tie into that event. And we are just starting to speed up, I think, in announcements and releases. That being said, there really isn't a ton of news still. So we'll just go through everything as it at our normal pace and see what happens here today. Now, as far as holidays go, I think in my new attempt to be a little bit more laid back and not kill myself by overexerting, I will probably take some holidays off, but probably not that many. Like 4th of July doesn't really mean much, I think, to many people, other than a possible day off on the weekend. Unless you are actually a veteran, then maybe it means something to you. But then there's also Veterans Day, so 4th of July is more just the Independence Day of the United States. So it's not particularly a religious. It's not a religious holiday, although some people may treat it that way, and it's not anything that really requires any large amount of pomp and circumstance. It's instead just, generally speaking, cooking some kind of barbecue, hamburgers, hot dogs, and maybe, if you care to make the effort, looking at fireworks, and that's pretty much it. If you go to a decent fireworks show, there will be some kind of like Canon in D style music playing in conjunction with the fireworks. So it is mostly just an excuse to take a break, and as a YouTuber who has overexerted themselves far too much in the past, it's a good excuse to take a break, and it's a good excuse to be in the moment with people that are actually physically around me, you know, friends and family and such, versus trying to do something special on YouTube. I don't think I saw any real content of note that was a YouTuber doing something special for 4th of July. Now, that almost certainly that did happen, but I didn't see it. That being said, I probably still will, if Christmas is on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'll probably still just maintain the schedule and stream that day. And frankly, any holiday, had it been a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I probably still would have streamed. I don't know. I'm kind of split on that idea, actually. I could see myself taking a break from that, and I could see myself not taking a break from that. Either I should have hit that one. That was a mistake. Yeah, so if holidays come and they're Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe I won't stream on those days, maybe I will. None of the holidays really mean too much to me in general, but it is a cheap and good excuse to take a break, and certainly I don't take enough breaks for my liking and for my own mental well-being. And as somebody who worked previous jobs that were very abusive and would not give you holidays off, even if you wanted them, and were jobs that in no way needed to have their offices open on those holidays, let me say, hey, call in sick on those holidays if you want those holidays off, and they won't work with you. Try to work with your company first, but just call in sick. Just don't show up. It's not worth it. Like, sure, you're getting paid, and maybe you need that money to pay the bills, and maybe this is the thing that'll get you fired. But the thing I certainly learned about is I was threatened with being fired way more often than I was actually ever fired at every job I've ever worked. They want you to live in this constant fear, but they don't want to go through the frustration and hassle of actually trying to find somebody to replace you. Job's done. So, yeah, if your entire family is meeting up on Christmas, call in sick. Go to the family event. Family is way more important than jobs. So I guess I'll possibly take that mentality too. But yeah, I want to just preach taking it easy and not overexerting yourself in general. And it's not like I even did anything yesterday. Just ate hamburgers and hot dogs and watched a movie and didn't even really watch the fireworks. So me personally eating hamburgers or hot dogs, I don't eat a lot of hot dogs, but I try to only eat them once a year. But I eat hamburgers pretty frequently, and I watch movies on Netflix and other TV, Amazon Prime and stuff pretty frequently. So it really wasn't much different than anything I potentially would have done any other day. For that reason, though, I have not done any more recording of Zombie or Zombie U, which is fine. I don't foresee I'm going to run into any real problems finishing that series, but once I am finished with that series, it's time to put an end to the October lineup and move into the November lineup. The Steam Summer Sale is still going on, so I'm asking people to support my channel still by friending me on Steam. The information's down below, and gifting me a game off my wish list, or if you don't want to choose, gifting me a gift card. If you buy anything right now during the summer sale, there's a chance you might win free video games if you're doing the Grand Prix, and you could probably jump into the Grand Prix even on the last day. You wouldn't have any very good odds of winning a game so far. Again, still have not won a game, and I'm consistently on Team Tortoise. Because I'm on Team Tortoise, I'm consistently making it into the top 3 podium to win games that are being given away, but I've yet to see a single one given. The way they've set up giving away the free game in particular has a one major flaw of being open to pre-orders, whereas if it was not open to games that weren't out yet, and we don't even really need to go down the early access rant there. If it was just games that aren't out in any format, if pre-orders, it would have drastically changed what games have been given away by far. Everybody wants Cyberpunk 2077. Everybody expects way too much from Cyberpunk 2077. It is getting super overhyped, and it's going to only end up in tears, I'm sure, when it turns out that Cyberpunk 2077 is closer to like Deus Ex Human Revolution, which was a good game, but not the best game ever. But yes, because that game is at the top of everybody's wish list, including mine, that game is getting a ridiculous amount of pre-sales, pre-purchase sales, which is just really handing CD Projekt Red a victory as far as Valve is concerned. It's just, here's some free money, but it's almost, I don't think anybody at Valve is frankly smart enough to have anticipated this, but it is almost a genius move in itself, because what it has done is it has made it so that people who were going to potentially get Cyberpunk 2077 through CD Projekt Web service, Good Old Games, now very potentially there's a small percentage of people that now have it on Steam, and so they might have brought over a very small percentage of people who are hardcore fans of Good Old Games, which has no DRM, into Steam, which is nothing but DRM and a storefront. So it almost is like a calculated move. I know in my instance, I got The Witcher 3 for free by buying a video card, and they gave me a Good Old Games code. So now I really would like Witcher 3 and the DLC on Steam, because I don't want this one game that is on Good Old Games as the only game I have on Good Old Games at all. Because I'll inevitably eventually forget that I have the game on Good Old Games and move over and purchase it a second time anyways. Of course, it would be really silly to get the Blood and Wine DLC for Witcher 3 and play that for the first time now that it's been a couple years since that game came out. I've just missed the bus on that. Let's start covering the news. Gamatsu has an article. Bedfellows launches December 19th in Japan. That's a crime and suspense themed visual novel. Okay. So there's a single Switch case picture here. So, it's coming out for the Switch, iOS, and Android. This is, I think, what we're going to start seeing a lot more of is the idea that things will be specifically Switch and cell phones when it comes to visual novels. Nobody's really going to make a PS Vita game, and frankly, going to PlayStation 4 doesn't make a lot of sense. So, PlayStation 4 once again seems to have censored a trailer or something for a game that's coming up called Crystar, Crystar. Apparently there's a shot where the character looks like their bare buttocks is being exposed. Now, the thing about that, of course, is if you're wearing a G-string or a thong, Basically, your bare buttocks is being exposed, but that's in certain circumstances not an issue, and to me, never really an issue. But yeah, most bikinis that women wear at one time or another will expose at least 95% of their buttocks, cheeks. So
what is my purpose?
yeah, Sony of Sony Interactive Entertainment should probably just be colloquially renamed as Sony of California now. And if I was going to get really insulting or creative, I'd probably call it something of Sony of Woke SJW California. Continuing to take the extra effort to censor things that had already been censored to meet Zero's standard in Japan, the Japanese video game rating system, and ESRB's standard in the United States and North America. I'm pretty sure ESRB covers Canada and Mexico too, at least. Nintendo of Japan had its shareholders meeting. That they were asked directly if they were going to do any extra level of censorship. They're saying no, we're going to just let the Zero and ESRB do their jobs and rely on these third-party independent third-party companies, which, in all fairness, at least for the ESRB, it's not a 100% independent third-party company, but it's pretty independent. But they're not going to step in and do extra censorship. It's possibly a little dishonest or disingenuous for Nintendo to say that, because I'm sure there have been a few instances where Nintendo, even in the past 3 or 4 years, have given notes and complained about things in games, but they've done it very privately, very quietly to the developers, and they probably the thing that developers are complaining about Sony doing, PlayStation doing, versus the way they would like it to be done, is for them to just write down the rules. This is the same complaint that always happens with YouTube also, is YouTube just does not explain its rules or regulations in any clear and concise way. And even YouTube is trying to do that through their YouTube help channel. Like, they're going through it and giving some doing extra videos and making specific examples, and it's still all very polished and very thought out. They're being very careful about what they're saying, and frankly the enforcement on YouTube is not consistent with what they're saying, and so there's still a problem there. But yeah, when you're making a game and that game has to launch on a certain date, and then Sony tells you have to remove or change an entire section, something a lot more than just changing an art piece, where arguably quickly and easily censoring an art piece is only a day's worth of work. But even a day delay is money going down the drain that you had not planned on spending, because Sony has just been unclear about what they're complaining about. And inherently, to not get on a rant against SJWs though, this is the pro-censorship model in a nutshell, is that they never want to be clear about what they want, because they want to always be able to complain about something else. So no matter what you do, it will never be good enough. And certainly I have dealt with people like that in my life, where it's like, yeah, no matter what you do, if you do what they ask, they're still not going to be happy. So eventually you realize you just have to tell them to F off, for lack of a better term, that you don't care about their feelings or their opinions, because they're not pleasable ever, or can't accommodate their demands. Yeah, so yeah, that's a long way of saying, yeah, apparently Crystar is being censored on the PS4, another Japanese game that in the past would have been very well treated and well received by the Japanese audience on the console of choice that used to be, at least the Japanese console of choice, which was the PlayStation. So yeah, Sony PlayStation's digging its own grave. It really is, and I don't know why they're doing this when they could have just maintained the high level of success that they've had, at least in Japan. And instead, they are now pushing people to the Switch and pushing people to cell phones, and even in a very small way, pushing people to play the Microsoft console in Japan, which was never the case. Moving on, we have a game here on Komatsu. Amazing Grace, What Color is Your Attribute, for the PS4, launches September 26th in Japan. I still have yet to get a real feel as far as whether the Japanese releases of Japanese only games on the PS4 are going to start getting censored or affected, but I think it's eventually going to try and bleed over. This game is labeled as an endless Christmas romance visual novel, and you can see it's got anime girls in it. So there's a video here. We could skip through here and see how this goes. I will say, the way the Japanese anime industry turns Christmas into this weird, into this romanticized season is really interesting, to say the least. It does something that is definitely a lot less commercial than what's in the United States. If you're a child around Christmas, it's just all about, I want toys, I want gifts, I want things. If you're an adult and it's Christmas, it's all about, I need money to buy these toys, these gifts for these kids. It's pretty much all it is. It's 100% the Coca-Cola designed Santa Claus and commercialization and buying products that you would logically not want to buy or not have any desire to buy outside of the Christmas season. So it's all about things in the United States, where the Japanese have made it all about people, and I think it's better for it to be all about people. And the Japanese are a huge gift-giving culture, so they give gifts like year-round all the time, and so I think that solves that desire in a more balanced way. And yeah, if you don't have any friends or family on Christmas, then you're just left out of all activities. Because most Christmas events in the United States are aimed at kids, or aimed at least family interactions of some sort.
Victory is yours this time.
Let's see. Last stream we mentioned that RetroPie version 4.5 came out at the very end of the stream. Well, apparently the composite video out is broken, so if you had installed it, I think they have a kludged on solution to fix it now, but they clearly went out too early and didn't test it. It's believable though that very few people are using composite out. I bet there's still a decent amount, but I bet people that actually would have gotten early access to that version and tried the beta of version 4.5 weren't testing composite out. This is kind of a run for the RetroPie series where they need more people, frankly, programming for it and testing it, because before this they had been delayed quite a bit because the Linux kernel did something that the version of the Linux kernel they were using was not working with the Sony Bluetooth controllers, PlayStation controllers, which for most Linux users that's something nobody would even notice, but for a operating system designed to be run on a Raspberry Pi to run emulators and play old video games, that's a huge deal. It would be nice if it became this scenario where just almost everybody has a Raspberry Pi and RetroPie on it, and everybody's testing it, and everybody's so into tinkering in Linux that they could give feedback and support, but that's not realistically going to happen. That's asking. That would have been the equivalent of everybody learning how to use DOS on computers, and that never happened if Windows 3.1 had not been created to make a visual interface and mouse and all of that. If those elements hadn't made it easier to use computers would have never gotten to a high level of popularity that they once were. But and computers certainly have gotten easier since then, or at least in general they do. Although I'm starting to really question, like I've run into some stories recently where it seems like if you just go buy a Walmart computer, or if you've just got an old computer, you still very well may be having a 1995 bad time with computers. Particularly if you don't know a lot about them and don't really have the desire or ability to learn a lot about them. Cell phones, I think in particular, offered a helpful solution in a lot of ways by getting rid of some of those shenanigan things and just starting all over again. There we go. So, next game we have on Gematsu is Death End Request teaser trailer. So, this is clearly going to be a dark JRPG if I was to guess, and it's in development for the PS4. So let's see what this is. It's a sequel to Death End Requests. Oh wait. This is Death End Request 2, so it's a sequel to a game that already exists. So, let's see what this teaser trailer is. Seeing a bloody hand, we're seeing a bunch of Japanese text, we're seeing flashes of violence. This is from Compile Heart. It says RPG. Compile Heart, kind of known for making the anime girls style games. And it seems like there's going to be several different characters. I find it odd that it's only being made for the PlayStation 4, but I guess we shall see. Didn't play very fast. It will, in all fairness, be a... It would take decades for Sony to lose all of its good graces. Sony probably owns, in part, a lot of companies in Japan, so a lot of Japanese games will be made for the PS4 regardless. A lot of Japanese people will just never jump the ship to Nintendo. They may have even had a bad experience with Nintendo decades previous, and that might very well be the reason.
A new Valore Delano.
Let's see.
Thunderstruck. Job's done.
So yeah, I could see it taking a very long time, and as long as the PlayStation 5 comes out, and it has any kind of fan base at all, then we know there will be some companies that will be trying to work on that factor and be a launch exclusive for the new PlayStation, just because it might be being a big fish in a small pond.
Remember the Sunwell.
There we go. So it'd be ridiculous to claim doom and gloom for the PS4 or the PlayStation whatsoever. Not yet, no. If it's 2 years into the launch of the Microsoft Scarlet and the PlayStation 5 has only sold like 500,000 units or something, maybe at that point you start to spell doom and gloom, but Sony would just be real quiet about it and it wouldn't get canceled or killed. They would just drag it out like they did the Vita for a ridiculously long amount of time. Let's see. That was kind of wrong.
Remember the Sunwell.
Do that.
Remember the Sunwell.
And then in the turn.
The fate of the world hangs in the balance.
Again, Anime Expo happening, so most of these announcements and news are going to be anime games focused. Gamatsu has an article here. Conception Plus Maidens of the 12 Stars coming to the West for PS4 and PC on November 5th, in North America November 8th in Europe. This is the game where this male character is like fated, or the only way he can save the world is to actually conceive these star children that will fight in the future. So it's a kind of silly harem concept that I believe they made an anime but the anime was, I think, pretty bad. I think the game might be particularly interesting, although the fact that you're limiting yourself to 12 characters makes it a more limited game. I'm gonna watch this trailer, but I'm gonna watch it off screen just in case, because there might be some adult content in there. Like it's definitely an adult theme, and But yeah, you're not really gonna have a full gacha game style. Yes, this is a partial nudity, sexual themes, M-rated game. That I think I want to say it's an RPG, but it might very well just be a visual novel type game. But you could certainly go with a full gacha game idea where you would just have an infinite number of star children that you could conceive. Yeah, the trailer seems to be showing off all the potential characters. So, yeah. It is really a conceited concept. Certainly is that my progeny are going to save the world and nobody else's progeny can possibly do anything. Let's see, the game's key features are, let's see, you form a party up to 13 characters strong and fight through stimulating positioning-based battles. So it's more of a strategy, top-down game. Apparently there will be labyrinths. So it's a half dating simulator, half strategy placement. I guess not even really real-time strategy game. Of course, the video didn't show any of that to me at all. I don't think a game like Conception would probably be playable on YouTube. Although, in all fairness, I also heavily suspect it's going to be a game that really doesn't have anything, like, I don't think it's going to have anything really to say about itself at all. It's probably a pretty generic and boring game. Apparently my duplicate tab wasn't working or isn't working. Might be time to reload my Chrome browser again. I don't think I'm gonna win this one, unfortunately. I am playing ranked, so I'm gonna lose a star. I should probably play this card just so I play more shaming cards. Yeah, that worked pretty well as far as playing cards, and we might as well play ranked. Tech Raptor has an article here. Darkwood review, atmosphere done right. So Darkwood is, I guess, a horror kind of Diablo-esque game that every time I've seen it, it's looked exactly like this, where it's just like a top-down Diablo dark scenario game. And I feel like Tech Raptor is getting paid to write about this because certainly I think they've written 2 or 3 articles here. They gave it an 8.0 out of 10. Great. Says Darkwood manages to pull off horror in a truly stunning degree, with minor gameplay annoyances that are in the game are more than covered by the exploration and atmosphere. The pros are creepy, horrific atmosphere, twisted artwork and character design, great replay value. The cons are slightly stiff combat and dull nighttime sections. So I really wish Darkwood received TechCrafter received Darkwood on PS4 with the code supplied from the developer. I really wish if this game was good that people would put better screenshots up. It really feels like an example of a game that just has bad screenshots. Yeah, I'm definitely not sold on that game. Gamatsu has an article here. Elea, E-L-E-A, is coming to PS4 on July 25th. Sci-fi adventure game dated for the Sony platform. Again, an example of a screenshot that looks alright, but it doesn't tell me a lot about the game. It first launched on the Xbox One and PC in September 2018, so it's a year old. So it's going to be an improved version with PlayStation Pro enhanced. Let's see. Let's look at the trailer. See if we can get an idea of what this is. Looks like you're in the spaceship, and they're taking their sweet time to show that. Or maybe you're just going to be going on a surreal journey. There were several games where you were just kind of walking simulators on spaceships. Just this darkness, then polygonal shapes. Is there anything here? Maybe it's a VR world.
Job's done.
Yeah, that was a terrible trailer. Says the description is Elea is a sci-fi adventure game where you play a space scientist in 2073. Your name is Elea. Earth was struck by a horrid childhood disease, and Elea's husband Ethan joined the expedition to colonize Solus, a habitable exoplanet, to save humanity from extinction. The interstellar ship he was on the pilgrimage went radio silent shortly after he reached the planet's surface. 13 years later, Elea has joined a recovery mission to investigate the fate, or it's supposed to say fate, but it actually says faith, of the expedition. Who follows the wondrous journey? What follows is a wondrous journey through space. Sounds like a walking simulator to me. So yeah, there is a flaw even in that logic, though. If someone is going to colonize a planet, they're going because in part they're expected or planning on having children, or taking their family and children that they already have to that planet in the hopes that eventually their children would grow up and have children. It makes very little sense that your husband would leave to colonize the planet without you. So they seem to have completely written themselves into a unrealistic premise. Let's see. Like you couldn't ride around that. Certainly, you could say he was going to begin the process for future, to establish a base for future colonization. But to just simplify it down to he was going to colonize this planet without you, that means he's saying directly that he plans on having children with somebody else, which doesn't sound like a monogamous thing to do, to say the least. Moving on, we have a Gamatsu article. Otome meaning young maiden, visual novels. Star-Crossed Myth is coming to the Switch in 2019. So here's the picture of what it looks like. You've got your pick of anime boys, as it were, to romance. So it is nice to see more otome series released. Anime games and anime in general does seem to be kind of heavily male gaze centric, to use a phrase that really shouldn't be ever used, where it's usually anime girls and for the pleasure of somebody who likes to look at anime girls, whether that is a straight male or a otherwise less than straight female. So getting a little bit of balance is helpful there, and I think in Japan, that particularly in like manga and light novels and such, there is a bit more balance than there is in the West. And when you compare these kind of things to other Western art styles, the split is almost universal. There are way more cartoons that are on for kids in the West that are focused towards young males, and way less that are focused towards young females. And there are way more adult movies and teenager movies that are focused towards males than females. So diversity is always good in the forms of entertainment that you get, and I would be more than happy to cover a good otome story on Steam, assuming that the YouTube would be alright with me covering an otome visual novel. Moving on, we have Gamma Sutra. The French government launches Join the Game campaign to recruit game devs. Now, I've seen this reported as a direct attempt at stealing away game devs from the UK due to Brexit. I think that probably was a consideration. France is already the headquarters of Ubisoft and Quantic Dreams and Arcane Studios and Gameloft and Focus Home Interactive, so there's quite a few already there. Of course, it wasn't too long ago that people were protesting just pay inequality in France, and France has never really shook the appearance of their employees being French in general, which means they're cantankerous and lazy and just cause problems, and that's a stereotype certainly, but it's in part earned too. There is also, I suppose, a slight mention that it seems like the European Union Parliament, in backroom closed door meetings, just picked a new major person in charge. I don't know if it was the direct leader, and it was just this completely closed door undemocratic process, and people are upset about that too. And when you see something like that, then you really have to question, maybe the UK does have some valid argument to make that they should leave the European Union, because it is these unilateral, not democratic actions that people have been upset about in the past from the European Union. In particular, a major one being that they took in a massive amount of refugees, which I don't disagree with doing the right thing and taking in refugees, but it's certainly added fuel to a fire that already existed. And of course, that's just my understanding of the whole Brexit and European Union thing from the outside. I think that they probably should maintain the European Union, but reform it and force out some what seems like growing corruption that's happening in it, and try to clean it up instead of abandoning it. Or, you know, you can just have all the party members abandon the European Union and form European Union version 2, a whole new organization with sans the corrupt elements. But yeah, I doubt. See, the thing is, if somebody's gonna leave the UK because of Brexit, if a video game designer company is gonna leave the UK, that's a major expense. They're not gonna move to France. They're gonna move to India. They're gonna move to China. If that's the only reason you're doing something like that. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you would just move to Spain or Portugal or some other area. I don't think France would be on the pick. You'd want a place where they would look for places where there's more cheap labor that they can get for QAs, testers to use. They would look for cheaper places to live, and they would just force their good talent to either move to these new locations or get rid of their good talent. But honestly, very few people are going to do any of that, because if you're actually trying to make a good product, the last thing you want to do is ever have this major delay in movement. Instead, you might start a second office in a different country, but you wouldn't immediately move offices. You'd start a second office and then eventually slowly move your employees you wanted to keep to the second office and then shut down the original office.
Shall we make a store?
Moving on, we have a game here on Steam that's a bunch of Asian characters, and it's called Spider Derby. It looks like it's probably I won't even say low effort, a medium effort with bad graphics Chinese game, if I was to guess. Seems like it's a hex grid battle game where it zooms in and shows you the battles. It's just not very visually interesting. $4.19 discounted, English and Chinese. So this is a great example of just the Chinese market has been making stolen NES plagiarizing ROMs for so long that they have no clue what the level of quality of video games is, or maybe they have a clue, but they don't have any ability to meet that level of quality. So while China is like an industrializing nation, there is a level of technical industrialization that would have to happen for any country to get into video games these days. You're going to have a generation of people who could have gone probably to foreign countries' colleges to be educated on game development in foreign countries' colleges, just to have the understanding of what the games look like and how to program them. It is kind of a chicken and an egg thing, and video game development education isn't great in the first place. So yeah, it's going to be a slow process, but they'll eventually get there. We'll start seeing some really good games coming out of China eventually, hopefully. Next story, Game of City has an article. Shovel Knight has surpassed 2.5 million sales. I believe I own Shovel Knight, or there's like 2 Shovel Knight games, and I bought a bundle that gave me both because they said the price was going up. I got suckered in that scam of the price is going up permanently, buy it now while it's on sale, and then during the summer sale. People have told me to play Shovel Knight and that it's not a super difficult game. My fear was that it was going to be something like Super Meat Boy, where it would be frustrating and a mess to try and play.
Remember the Sunwell.
But I've been told it isn't like that, so I'm putting my faith in the person that told me that, and so eventually in the next few years I'll get around to playing Shovel Knight, or at least trying it out. Tech Raptor has the same article. French government hoping to poach British game developers post-Brexit. Let's see. A 30% tax credit available on video game products. So they're giving a big tax credit. This is one of those, not to get too political, people, I think it's libertarians in the United States particularly, love to bang on this idea that the government cannot create jobs ever. It's a religious dogmatic statement that is not based on like a realistic or real world explanation of why they're saying what they're saying. Their argument is that if the government, whatever government, is taking tax money income and then giving that tax money income to people, they're really just nullifying those two things out. This inherently, like many libertarian opinions, ignores the fact that in a properly taxed society, you'd be taking a lot of money away from the extremely rich 0.001% and giving that to employees at government jobs or to grants at individual private companies that are promising to either act as contractors for government projects or promising to hire a certain number of people in order to get the money. Quite often there's corruption in these deals, sure. There's been a lot of corruption, and a lot of these companies don't live up to the promises they make to get these grants. So it's not a good process. But to say it doesn't create any jobs is unrealistic. To say it can't happen is unrealistic. I would not be surprised one bit with a 30% tax discount, which means that they're not even giving government money to these potential new video game companies in France. They're saying, if you start a new company, we won't tax you as much as we tax everything else. So, if you started a video game company and made no profit, you wouldn't be paying taxes anyways. So it really would only benefit people who are majorly successful or planning on being majorly successful as a video game developer. And sure, I would at some point argue that trying to manipulate the way jobs are created and kept and the way industries are run through taxes is an ineffective way to do that. But if you do it with direct control, then you're talking about either communism or socialism, probably socialism, unless you're making the claim that you're going to control all the industries and all of the profits from those industries belong to the government and not the people, which there's a slight difference there. Let's just play these cards, because might as well. I guess I could kill this guy. Yep. So yeah, there's a better way to do it. It's just that then it has the specter of socialism when you have the government actually controlling the companies, and it would be really difficult to have a government organization, a department that ran video game companies or artistic companies in general. It's better to do grants and be a Patreon, in my opinion, for arts. It makes a lot more sense if you're having somebody run the agricultural industry, because that's easy, that's scientific. You can say everybody's going to plant this crop on this day, you're going to use this much fertilizer of this brand, you're going to water this much. Those are all things that you can scientifically get actual numbers around, but you can't say the same for a video game. You can't say everybody's going to make first-person shooters because that's the big popular thing that doesn't work. I feel like I've devolved into a economics rant again. I do that more often than I particularly should. Well, that's gonna be it for this recording. We're done with this account. We'll move over to the European account. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list. Right now the Steam Summer Sale is still going on. Great time to gift games. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.
Find a seat if you can.
Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Friday, July 5th. We are on the European account. We need to reroll something, win 2 games in class, or play Pirates. Let's give it a playing Pirates. That's not likely to happen. Then that puts me where I can just win 2 games with Warlock to get these 2 done, and we need to defeat the Great Heist bosses 3 times. I believe we also need to win this Tavern Brawl. Because the way of Tavern Brawls have changed, we'll be doing a Tavern Brawl every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday now, which should not bite me in the butt ever, unless I manage to stream for the 1 hour that it is not available. So this Tavern Brawl, it's you discover a card, it gets added to your deck, otherwise your entire deck is full of just chickens and buffs, small buffs, and coins. So start with this. This is a good starting point. We'll play this, we'll play the coin, and we'll want to go ahead and give this one health. So what this is going to do is shuffle these 2 chickens back into this deck. So there should be 8 cards. Then I'll draw like 4. Well, now I have 4 cards. So yeah. how this all works out is a little confusing, certainly, but it will make sense. We've got some games, although not a lot. I already see the end of the road. I can see the Humble Store tab on my browser, so it'll be about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and we'll be done with all the news. It's a slow Friday still, so it makes sense. We have a game here called Project Cybertronic that just came out. It looks a little bit like a mech game in space, although it is particularly dark and there's arguably a lot of stuff on the screen. It's a lot of heads-up display. So there might be a game here, or there might not. What I'm not really seeing is enemies that you're shooting at, or anything like that. So it feels like this might be an unfinished early access, probably a bit of an asset flip game. It wouldn't be hard at all to have something like that.
Almost out of time. So many possibilities.
This would be a terrible card to play.
I will enjoy watching you die.
So Cybertronic is early access. It's $13.37. It's multiplayer only though, so that explains why we don't see any enemies. It's English only as the language, which really, if you're going to make a game that looks like a mech game, you should have some form of support for a Japanese audience, because they're the creators of mechs and the lovers of mechs way more than anybody else. The fact that this game is multiplayer means it doesn't go to my follow list. I'm not going to play a multiplayer only game. I have no way in my mind of reviewing those type of games. Seemed like it was 5 minutes after last Wednesday's stream that this came out. Gamer Sutra has this article. Zachtronics games are now free to public schools and educational nonprofits. They don't have demos or anything, so you basically have to email them and tell them there's a list of things they want you to apply, and say to tell them you're a teacher here. They're gonna probably verify that you actually are a teacher there at that location, and they probably will do some common sense verification to see if your position would justify you wanting to get Steam keys for all their games. And my guess is it, particularly if you were going to go do this and you are a legitimate teacher, either an educational nonprofit or a public school teacher, you're going to need between 30 and 100 licenses, Steam keys, because you're going to have to make a Steam account for every computer, and then you're going to have to make a different Steam key to activate each of those games for every computer. So if your computer lab has 30 computers in it, you need 30 Steam keys. If you have 3 computer labs and that gets up to 100, that makes sense. Now, arguably Zachtronics games, which include Opus Magnum, which is the Alchemy computer programming game, and Exapunks and TIS 100, they're all programming games, so it makes sense that they should be available. But I think kids would probably mostly want to play Opus Magnum, and I'm not sure that there is a significant amount of content there that you can educate around or really do much around at all. The thing about educational software, and this is better treated in the Minecraft educational mode. And it's nice to see that game companies are trying to get into schools and be more educational, because most of the educational games and software are so that there's no good lesson, as it were. No lesson plan, no lessons, no checking to see if they really understand what's going on. And even Zachtronics says directly, it's like they are not designed as teaching tools, and it advises educators to spend some time playing them before introducing them to young minds. So, like, they're fine games. They're not particularly violent games at all. Opus Magnum's not violent. I would say Exapunks maybe is a little like robot on robot violence, but that's it. Like computer program on computer program things. Home schools and private for-profit schools are not eligible, although private for-profit schools can request discounts. It really almost comes down to, these would be the kind of games that, in my previous experience, would be on a library computer, where if you want to play on the computer instead of reading a book in the library, that's an option just to keep you somewhat quiet. That was my experience with library computers. And certainly public libraries are a center for people who don't have access to computers at their house or access to the internet. So in general, it's nice that Zachtronics is doing this, but it is also worth mentioning you're getting free games that are somewhat educational and probably a lot more fun than the actual educational games. But this is not going to teach anybody to be a real programmer. It'll teach very basic concepts and ways of thinking. This probably are games that you would want to introduce to a 6th grader, I would guess, like end of elementary, beginning of middle school, not something that you would want to be teaching to a high school kid who should be at that point learning actual C++ programming or Python. A lot of the programming
possibilities.
A lot of the programming educational things that are out there use just drag and drop programming elements, and I think oversimplify the concept of programming, but still try to pretend like you're actually programming when you aren't, or when you're programming with such a limited instruction set or code base that the things you can do are super simplistic. I would argue that there is a possibility that the early level drag and drop programming educational things out there already are better to start kids off down the path of learning programming than playing the Zachtronics game, which is more obfuscated a little bit. So, but having a whole library of different games might work, because I could certainly see a student not liking one program and really liking the other. And if you want to teach anything, having people be happy with their experience is a big time important factor. I'm gonna lose here. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Yeti, which looks like a MS Paint tanks game where you player versus player. looks like garbage. It's $1.99, which is too expensive for what it looks like. It's English only, and it's single player only. So this looks like a student project where the student could not animate or get anybody to animate anything, and probably isn't programming it in a modern engine or anything that would make it run well. It definitely does not look like a game that deserves to be on Steam, though, or available for purchase as a standard just game. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Get a job. Disruptor Beam is hiring a senior game designer. That is in Framingham, Massachusetts. I don't see a lot of jobs in Framingham, Massachusetts. Oh, let's see. Don't really have anything else to do it. Let's see. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random 3-cost minion. Transform a random card into a demon. There you go. This. Just trying to get rid of cards, basically, is all you're trying to do. Next we have a game on Steam called Ruin Survival. You can see it's already mixed and it has 21 reviews. It's 47% positive of the verified purchase reviews. This is, it looks like an asset flip first person shooter horror game. It actually doesn't look terrible at all, so it must really play bad, because I've seen way worse asset flip games not get that many reviews. It's early access, $9.99, English and Russian. Again, I don't think you call something like this a Russian troll game, though. You don't make a game like this really easily. Even if you made that game once and then sold it multiple times, I still don't think that that's a troll. I think that's the beginning of an attempt of actually selling a product.
Almost out of time.
This story is a little surprising. Gematsu has a article here. Oni Chambara, which is the game where it's the bikini girl with the samurai sword fighting zombies, is one of the main characters. So Oni Chambara Origin launches this fall in Japan. First trailer and latest details. So here we have apparently the main character. It's an actual samurai guy instead of the girl in the bikini fighting zombies. Is this because this is a PlayStation 4 game and it's already being censored in the full design of it? He is the father of Aya and Sakis, who I think are the two main female characters. And as a samurai, he looks cool, certainly. He's not animated amazingly well, but he looks cool enough to fight zombies, but that really changes the game. There's a zombie bosses for Sayaka and Anzu, so you have now the zombies are in the scantily clad. So maybe they've twisted it around and realized, you know what, since you're mostly only looking at the backside of the main character in a third-person perspective game, let's make the zombies the scantily clad ones. Here's what you normally would see in an Oni Chamba game. I guess I need to play. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, health, attack, too late. So maybe it just does some flashbacks and flash forwards in the game. Apparently the two sisters are going to be fighting against each other too. So yeah, maybe there's something to the change. Maybe there's with this new game, or maybe they're just going to show the father in flashbacks and that's it. It says warning, and then it says a bunch of Japanese text. Well, I can't read that. I have no idea. So here's the trailer. It seems like they're showing off the music video also. Yeah, it's still a hack and slash game. Still, it would be nice if more of the Onichamber games came to PC. There's only one game on PC right now that's available, and a spin-off game in the same universe, which was what was it? Schoolgirls and Guns or something like that. It was 4 words, like Schoolgirls and something zombies, like SGHZ or something. That it'll be interesting. Almost certainly, the way things are going these days, you will hear something is going to be censored in the Onichamber series. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if the Onichamber series has been always just teen plus, and it's always just been bikinis and zombies, and it's never gone to any explicit nudity. Right now, it looks like Onichamber Origin is only coming out for the PS4, and it seems like not all the zombies are going to be female zombies, or just the bosses will be. So yeah, that series still going, perhaps not as strong as it once did. Let's do this and this. And then play this. Then in the turn. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Birchian Flight Simulator. It looks very empty in the graphics department. Looks just very, very bad visually for the level of textures that you would want to see in a game like this. It's early access, it's free, I guess, but then there's a music pack for $4.99, and it's English only. This is something that in no way appeals. There's plenty of flight simulator games out there. Let's see. This will actually be a great card to just have in your hand always. Next, we have a game on Steam that's just a bunch of Asian characters. It's tagged as a card game. I imagine this is a Chinese card game of some sort. The graphics look pretty nice here. Now, we'll talk about it later, but people still are speculating that the censorship in Hearthstone has something to do with China. I personally don't agree with that. I think the censorship has to do with a new artist being in charge and just SJW-ness. Because Hearthstone has already been trying to make a huge push into China and already succeeded to be in China. And I don't feel like that the Chinese censorship board has enough efficiency that they could have sent a message to, I believe it's NetEase that publishes the Hearthstone version in China, saying these need to be censored, or these are the elements we want censored in particular. And I don't see a reason why they would have targeted Hearthstone, which is a pretty big company. Like, so my opinion is Hearthstone was already pre-censored. Like, the fact that there are no skeletons in any of the art in Hearthstone was a pre-censorship to not have that happen, to allow it to be in China. There was a response from Blizzard where they said it didn't have anything to do with China, and I kind of believe them on that. And they also said we may censor some other cards, but we have no immediate plans to do that right now. But almost certainly they're saying they will eventually. If anything, it would be much more believable that they're trying to get into one specific Middle Eastern country, which I would guess would be either the country that is paying to have WrestleMania happen in, I think it's Sudan, but I could be wrong about that. There are definitely some Middle Eastern countries that have very rich people that are playing video games, whether it's legal or not, that are under some form of Islamic-based law that would want more censorship than even China would want. But they also want to be very friendly and make it themselves look like they are a safe and good place to take vacations in, although arguably I would say they are never going to be a safe and good place to take vacations in, because you run into the issue of what happens when people take trips to North Korea. They'll do something that is seemingly a normal action to a Westerner that is amazingly offensive. And it's not just Islamic countries, there are also many Asian countries that have kings that you can't insult, and so if you even slightly say something out of turn, you might end up getting thrown in jail. Just major cultural differences on what freedoms a normal citizen has in countries around the world, and I would not recommend anybody go to any country that does not agree upon and give as much freedom as possible to people visiting their country and their own citizens. So, anyways, that has nothing to do with anything other than Hearthstone, maybe. There, I got a free victory. This card game I've been looking at, it's not very visually impressive as far as the card art. And these could just be all asset flips for the card art. It doesn't look like it's a particularly interesting card game anyways. English is not supported, so it doesn't matter. It's 15% off for $3.39. Single player only, Chinese only. No in-app purchases, no DLC, early access. So it's almost guaranteed to not be a card game that could go anywhere. Alright, now that we are done with the Tavern Brawl, I can just play as the Warlock. I guess in this case I have to play as the Warlock. Ooh, I guess I can't. Can I? We're gonna run into some problems now, I've just realized. So we have this defeat 3 Great Heist bosses, and we need to win with the Warlock one time. The issue is because this is the European account and not the America's account, I have not done any of the solo adventure. I frankly, at this rate, am never going to do all of the solo adventure. I also haven't done any of the puzzle lab. So,
Greatest criminal undertaking in the history of villainy.
like, I need to pick, I guess, one here, which will be the easiest
We have
one.
recruited an elite band of disenfranchised
Can take the warlock,
miscreants.
good,
Each have their own as we plunder the
but we've
riches
not
of
done
Dalaran.
anything here
We will gain.
at all, so
You will begin with
just jump in here and hope I can defeat 3
guards and
bosses.
citizens of Dalaran will rise against us.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called People that's tagged as a strategy action game. Seems like it's just some maybe like real-time strategy
your
game
regrets.
where you're controlling people.
Another busy
But
day.
frankly, it just looks
Next
like
in
an
line.
asset flip game. Not seeing an actual gameplay mechanic. And that's where the video would come in, is that you would want to see how you're actually controlling things and moving things, and it doesn't seem like you are at all. This is early access. It's discounted to $8.99, single player, English only. People has a bad thumbnail too, so it looks like a low effort game. If we were to say low effort games have now stepped up their game and don't look as low effort as they once did, which is probably what we have to believe at this point, is that low effort games have stepped up a lot.
Next.
Tekan, all you've told me is true. You are an instrumental part of our master plan.
You're so sweet.
Let's see. What does this do? Swap the leftmost
Sorry,
cards.
this is the wrong line.
So it's just
Next.
moving cards around.
Waiting can be so tiring, huh?
So, next game we have on Steam here is called Hotel Giant. It's just a build a hotel simulator. Kind of an asset flip game, kind of nothing. It's discounted to $7.99. English, French, and German. That's more languages than most. But there's nothing visually impressive
So
about this that would make me
many
want to play it.
hours, so little time.
What does this do? Gives me coins. Okay. That's nice.
No cutting.
Next, we have a story here from TechRaptor. A PlayStation Network security flaw allows users the use of credit cards without security codes. Is this because they're using some kind of token that was easily stolen or calculated? Let's see if I can read some of this.
What can I blast for you?
Says this article says, while the PlayStation Network requires
Have
any
you
purchase
filled
to be
that form
accompanied with the full card
489C?
information, including adding in the CVV number, if the hacker has access to the account though they can create a fake payment that, when it fails, will default to the primary form of payment. This same anonymous contributor informed Multiplayer first that this exploit has been known for over 5 years, and that even when being submitted as a
Customers keep getting
security
ruder
breach
and ruder.
has been brushed off as serving no security risk. So apparently they've been warning PlayStation about this over and over again. And the question to ask here in particular is who is running the transactions for Sony's PlayStation Network, because it probably isn't it probably isn't Sony directly that's doing the credit card verification, but they very possibly are the people that are
You'll have to get back in line for this.
they are
Sorry.
very possibly the people that made the website and made the
Everyone
website
has
work that way.
demons.
And I could certainly see that if you
No cards left.
if you have a failed transaction, it would just default back to the default information on a storefront. The weird thing seems to be that not only does it default back to the basic information, but it defaults back to the basic information in a way that you don't need the credit card verification number anymore. Now, I will argue that TechRaptor is making a bit of a big deal about this, because what this, on the level of scale, is it's not a remote hack. It's, as far as it seems, you have to already have been able to hack or get into the account of the person. So the most common use in which you could do this is you would have stolen somebody's PlayStation already, the actual physical PlayStation, been able to log into their account and secure that account in a way that somebody can't change the password or deactivate the account, and been able to then initiate this attack to purchase a bunch of games. Like, that's
With each victory,
not
evil
as
organization grows in power.
easy to
Choose
do,
wisely
really.
to enhance your deck.
Like, it really isn't something that's going to happen on
Grow more
a
difficult
massive
as we
scale.
progress. I recommend you stop cheating.
But yeah, this is only just another bit of fuel on the fire of the PlayStation Network not doing its job right, not being up, getting DDoS'd. There's major problems here. And in a weird way, this might be the explanation as to why Sony Interactive Entertainment moved their headquarters to California. Is if the solution was, hey, we don't understand tech, we don't understand running a network, we don't understand any of these things, let's get all the geeks, all the nerds in California to come to our office and program better ways. You absolutely need, for PlayStation 5, a major improvement on the PlayStation Network, very possibly just breaking backwards compatibility completely, which I think for the amount of improvement that needs to happen, you're going to have to do that. So a whole new PlayStation Network for the PS5 with whole new back-end technology, with a whole new storefront and everything like that, and just completely not integrating it or transitioning the old technology to the new stuff. So, unfortunately, the side effect of trying to fix, very possibly trying to fix your back-end network technology issues, by moving to your offices closer to California. The bad side effect there is that you've got a whole new group of people in charge with a whole different way of how they want to run their business. So seems like the better solution, if that was what they were trying to do, would have been to open a new office in California and have that office specifically centered around doing the online services. If there was just this California-based Sony online services or PlayStation Network services office, that would have made a lot more sense.
Versus Nisi.
And I could very well argue that you would have been better off in Redmond, Washington, next to Microsoft, particularly now that Microsoft and Sony have agreed to use Microsoft's backend Azure services to run their servers. It would have been a lot smarter to start an office up in Redmond, Washington, and not down in California, where Redmond is the potential second place for being a center of technology. If anything, maybe in the next few years you'll start seeing a pattern where Redmond, Washington is the place for established technology companies, and California is the place for startup companies that have the new ideas that may just all be built around Bitcoin or something else ridiculous, and not really having a business plan. Moving on, I'm ranting a lot, but I guess it's not a problem since we don't have that much news. Gamatsu has an article here. Robotics Notes Elite is coming to the West for the PS4, Switch, and PC in 2020, followed by Robotics Notes Dash. I think this is probably a rhythm game, if I was to guess. This is from Spike Chunsoft. Let's see if we can watch this trailer and see. If this isn't a rhythm game, then it's just a visual novel. Or it's a mech fighting game. It looks a lot like BattleBots. Wouldn't be surprised if BattleBots actually was by a different name and getting released under a different name these days. Well, I'm seeing a bunch of anime characters and a bunch of mechs. So, who knows what it is? There's nothing here. It says Robotics Notes Elite. Seems like it has branching storylines and fighting. So, half branching storyline, half fighting game with mechs, I guess.
So
is
many dark
all I can
hours,
guess.
so little time.
There we go. I would be a little surprised if something like Robotics Notes became super popular, though. Or that it was a major deal release. There is something in that name that makes it feel just a little generic. How much health does this guy have? I can't really see over the shining light. Next, Gamatsu has an article. Nico Paritian has been announced for smartphones. This is a a continuation of series of cat girls in maid outfits running a maid cafe. It's a gacha game from what I understand, and because of that, it's a little questionable. Like, sure, you've got the light pink hair cat girl in a maid outfit, and then you've got the dark pink girl in a maid outfit, and then you've got the brown haired girl in a maid outfit, but their outfits are kind of standard with just different hints of colors on them. I don't see how you do something where, being a gacha game, where you would have to have a constant increase of new cat girls to collect and unlock, which is what gacha games are. It's a constant increase in what you're getting.
How many fingers do you see?
Unlike Destiny Child, which is the game I play on my smartphone, which is basically the exact same thing. It's just it's not cat girls. There is one cat girl in Destiny Child. Alright, let me think about this. Okay, there's very possibly 3 or 4 cat girls in a collection of probably 150 games, different anime girls to collect. So there's just a lack of variety I think you'd run into really quickly. In comparison, if you're not going for the anime aspect, there is Kleptocats, which is Kleptocats 1 and 2. I've played both of those games, and they have these 2D cats that you unlock, and that's slightly interesting, but not amazingly interesting, even though there are probably 600 different cats you can unlock. They are still flat animations of just cats that all generally look exactly like Garfield in their size and shape. I want to come back out here because I think I did not get a victory there. So when it says win 2 games with Warlock, it doesn't mean inside solo adventure, and when it says win 2 games with any class, it doesn't mean in solo adventure. So there's kind of no reason to continue going down that route. We might come back at the end of this stream and come back to it. But at the moment, we've got better things, more important things to do than play the solo adventure on my secondary account, which with my, I'm gonna say this I guess every stream, my feeling and opinion now is that when the Marvel card game comes out from Second Dinner, which is probably going to come out in beta a year from now, maybe 2, that's going to be the point where I almost certainly am going to get into the beta of that day 1 and never look back on Hearthstone. And the only thing I could see is I'm giving a very long run up here for people to say, no, keep streaming Hearthstone. We love Hearthstone as you stream it. We love that you're talking about the video game news and the games on Steam, because those things aren't negotiable. Even if I do get into the beta of the Marvel card game, I'm still going to be talking about games that come out on Steam and video game news. So if people do want to comment and say, we love how you're doing your streams now, that's great. I suppose I would listen to feedback, but I really wouldn't. It's disingenuous for me to even say I'd listen to feedback saying get rid of the video game news and the new games on Steam element. It's like, that's not going to happen. I like being informed. I like seeing how many games come out when there is a ridiculous amount of games that are coming out, even if most of them are garbage. There are a few hidden gems we see every now and then. Let's see, what next? More and more we're getting news from things that I think are really worth mentioning, games that I think are worth mentioning, They're coming to iOS and Android. But it really isn't a great way to play or cover any of these games. And frankly, most cell phone games, even if they do have a good license, don't need to be covered in the way that an expensive AAA game needs to be covered. Because they're designed to be played in small bursts and not played to completion. Whereas a AAA game, they're designed, at least in part, for you to play from the beginning all the way to the end. So Gamatsu has an article here. Capcom themed card battle game called Teppen is now available for iOS and Android. 8 heroes from the Capcom universes are bound by fate. Let's see if we can see who they are. It has a solo player, ranked matches, and a Grand Prix versus. The characters are Street Fighter series Ryu and Chun-Li. The Monster Hunter series is Rathalos and Nergigante. Mega Man 10 series includes 10. Dark Stalker series includes Morgan Honest Land, which I think that's just one name. Devil May Cry series has Dante. Resident Evil series has Albert Wesker. So, for a card battling game, it seems weird that you would have Capcom heroes. So basically, somebody's a warlock, somebody's a... let me just pause this for a second, this trailer, and play.
This was not in my contract.
And keep attacking, I guess. In the turn. So yeah, I want to show this. So it seems to me like each of these are just heroes. And so instead of having a generic hero of a mage and a warlock like in Hearthstone, you're getting these other characters. And the attack, this is showing these lines of attack and defense, or red and blue. I don't know. Maybe there's a balancing system that's different here. And they're trying to throw a bunch of animation on top of this, but it looks like it's a pretty generic, pretty boring card game. And it doesn't seem like it has spells or traps or anything like that, which you kind of expect. Like, there's some basic things you want to see in a game, in a card game. You want a spell or trap type cards to mess with how the game runs down and plays. Just draw a card. Okay. So working fine. Capcom is kind of known for trying to sell things and license things based on their properties that have been, at best, you could say is mediocre success. Like, the Mega Man series is successful. It's nowhere as successful as the Mario series, though. And they've been stretching and milking the Mega Man series forever. The Resident Evil series is successful, but then it also has a lot of bad Resident Evil series games too. So there's success and losses. Street Fighter series, some of the games are good, some of the games are bad. All of their games are more expensive than they should be. Next we have a game on Steam here called Save the Biros VR. I feel like there was another game that had this word Biros in it. This looks clearly like an asset flip maze maker game. Somebody made a general template that makes mazes, and all of a sudden in the past 6 months we've seen a lot of maze games with some other asset flip garbage. It's VR, it's $3.99, which is too expensive. It's English and French in the language. need to get rid of this guy.
No, no, no! Stop taunting me! Stop taunting me! Is this really necessary?
There we go. Yeah, Save the Bureau's not making it to the follow list. Next, we have a game on Steam here that's some Asian characters in the word exception, which looks like it's a programming game. An exception error is an error you get in programming, and frankly, I think that's all I can explain on it. I actually have gotten millions and millions of exception errors, and never was told or explained to properly what it meant. I almost certainly would guess what it means is that you called a function that required like 2 variables. So if it was a function called add that would add the first number to the second number, if you just put in the first number and it was expecting 2 numbers, then that's probably an exception error if I was to guess. But frankly, if you see exception error in any case, anywhere, it's just because a programmer typed the wrong thing in their programming, either in the final product or in the process of developing and programming. And mostly it just means ignore it and try to figure out what you did wrong, depending on your compiler and how well it verifies your code. It gets way more complicated when you start getting into object-oriented programming, which is a basic theory, almost religious theory on how programs should be developed, where you make something that can be a function, or it can be a variable, or it can be multiple functions. So an object-oriented programming of making a function called add might have a function where you have the first number and the second number and it will add, but you might have the first number and the second number and then add a third number, and it might, in that case, add all 3 numbers, or depending on how you program it, it might add the 2 numbers together and then multiply that by the third number, which wouldn't make a lot of sense on the face of it, but would make sense in some situations. Or it could be even more complicated. There could be a third function where it's the first number, second number, and a letter, which might mean something and it might not mean something. Whereas if you're doing the more traditional linear functional style programming, you would have one function that just wanted the first number and the second number, period. You wouldn't have multiple functions by the same name as an object. But there are benefits to object-oriented programming. It's just not the way I was taught, and I think it's overblown as a considered good thing. I really would like to re-roll this overload cards, but since I can't, I'm in a weird position now, because I don't know if my shaman deck has any overload cards in it. Alright, it does. So we'll just be playing custom shaman. And I'm moving kind of slowly here, so there's something to be said where I should speed up and wrap up this stream. So anyways, this game Exception is rated very popular, and it's tagged as a strategy programming game. It has a lot of positive reviews. It's $2.36, or $2.63 if I can read the numbers right. It's English and Chinese. It seems like it's a bit of a tower defense programming game. That might work particularly. So I'm willing to put this on the follow list. If anything, I should probably just put it on the wish list, but we'll see. Like, we're getting into a dangerous glut of of things that are potentially going to be on the wish list that are programming games. I really only want to cover one programming game per year, maybe two. I don't want to try to do the entire Zachtronics catalog in a year. Oddly, that is also the first game today that seems to have made it even to the follow list. So not super surprising. I think in the next 2 weeks we will start seeing a lot more good games coming out, and just a consistent ramp up of quality of games towards the Christmas holiday season. It'll be a slow-paced but pretty consistent ramp up, I think. At least once a week there will be some independent or AAA game coming out. Next game we have on Steam is Stranger Things 3, the game. Now, this is a confusing title because it is a game based off Season 3 of Stranger Things, not that there have been 2 other Stranger Things games from this developer. This is an officially licensed Netflix game, and it's an 8-bit graphics, top-down game. I think it's worth probably playing and putting on the fall list, but it is $19.99, and so that might be way more expensive than it deserves to be. And the one thing I think video games have done well is we have not been suckers for the licensed product. This is, for Netflix, a low effort game, and undeniably. They could have done a lot better. They could have had the voices and the likenesses of all the actors be in the video game. It could have been a full motion video game. There's things that could have been done and weren't done in favor of going with an 8-bit pixel graphics game, which also I get that that's supposed to be a throwback, but I don't think that counts enough to me as a, like, I think that's more of an excuse than a good reason to make an 8-bit graphics game. So I'll put Stranger Things 3 on the fall list, but I also probably would want to pay $5 for it. It's too expensive at the price that they want. Let's see. I want to play all these overload cards because that's what we're trying to do. TechRaptor has an article here. Dollhouse review, lights, camera, murder. Now this game, Dollhouse, the last review I saw was it was actually not that good of a game. It's been hyped, particularly by TechRaptor, quite a bit. Clearly they're getting advertising revenue for it. I wish I could find a different news source that I could tolerate to read that didn't overhype certain games in particular. And maybe they're not getting money. Maybe they just get really excited about some games. But Dollhouse in particular was really selling itself on just a simple trailer, and that's it. And when they come down the numbers, they gave it a 6.5 out of 10, which in the video game world means it's not good, even though they're labeling it good. The summary is Dollhouse has some honestly good mechanics and ideas and can be fun to play in short bursts. It's just repetitive, and its unique multiplayer modes have likely never been played. The pros they have for what was Dollhouse? I forgot the name already. Are clever ideas, great setting, occasionally scary, and some good puzzles. The cons are a forgettable story, repetitiveness, a dead multiplayer, and some bad puzzles. I honestly don't know if I'd even want to get Dollhouse if it was down to $1.99. It is a prime example. It's a real prime example of a game that was selling itself on one trailer and one still image and intrigue and mystery instead of selling itself on a quality product. Speaking of not selling yourself on quality products, potentially we have a game here called Panda Hero, which looks like a direct Super Mario Bros. Clone with coins and question mark blocks. This actually, in its movement, looks more interesting than most platforming games, but not super interesting, because you see a lot of derivative ideas here, and you don't see anything here that makes us feel like this is a fleshed out, well-designed product. Yeah. This feels like this might have been a mobile game at one point in development. It's $9.99. It's English and German. I suppose I could be generous and put it on the fall list, but almost certainly 6 months to a year from now, it won't have 20 reviews and it won't make it to the wish list anyways. Alright.
Lightning can strike twice.
I should have played that first. That would have been smarter. Whatever. Next, we have a game on Steam called Hero Express. This looks like one of these mobile games where you're driving a car and you can only speed up so much, or you roll the car over and you're trying to do jumps. There was a game like this that integrated also guns in the front and back, where you're shooting zombies to get more coins to upgrade your weapons. Even with that extra element, that game that I tried many years ago wasn't that fun. This doesn't even have that much going for it, and it doesn't look that fun. It's $4.99 and English only. They're saying it's finally available on Steam and Switch. Another great example of a game being able to come to the Switch eShop and get prestige it probably doesn't deserve. And there is no prestige for being on Steam, since everything is allowed on Steam. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Space Invaders Invincible Collection launches March 26th in 2020 in Japan. So, the Invincible Collection, I guess, includes Space Invaders, the 78 black and white version, the 78 colored film version. It wasn't actually color, it was still a black and white screen. They put a transparency of different colors over the screen so that the white colors of the enemies would look like other colors, and it was an interesting little trick to do in the 78 to avoid having to change all the monitors. And in emulation, they had to adjust for that. Space Invaders Part 2 in 79, Space Invaders Super Space Invaders 97, Space Invaders Extreme for PC, which is a very different game, and some other games to be on top of that. Also, Space Invaders DX, Space Cyclone, Lunar Rescue. Seems like they're going to throw some other games that are similar to Space Invaders in there. I have yet to meet anybody that was so excited about Space Invaders, though, that they would want to buy a collection. I would buy a collection on PC, sure, if it's cheap, but I probably wouldn't play it very much. it really would be a case of a 30-minute spotlight to show the entire collection, not just to show off a single game. Space Invaders was a big time deal in '78 when it came out, but compare that to like Donkey Kong that came out in arcades only a few years later, and Donkey Kong has multiple levels, and the levels look different. It's full color. It has way better audio. The amount of technology improvements and just programming improvement that happened in arcade machines was very, very fast, and quite a lot in a very competitive field. And it had to be a very competitive field because you were paying the equivalent of maybe $1,000, maybe $3,000 for these arcade machines that were taking up a considerable amount of square footage in your arcade, and probably using a decent amount of electricity on top of that. So your game, if your game was not constantly getting people to play it, if there was a arcade machine that was only getting a few dollars a day, that's way too little to ever potentially pay itself back. Nowadays, arcade machines arcades are really not even centered around expecting to make any money, it seems. Mostly, if you're going to see a place with arcades, it's like a entertainment center / bowling alley, and they're trying to get you on the food and the drinks and have machines that sell tickets. They're not trying to make their profit by 1 quarter at a time. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Fishing Star World Tour Physical Edition launches in 2019. This looks like a Switch kid-friendly fishing game. It's coming. It has a physical edition and an eShop edition. Fishing games, I guess, are still popular in Japan, somewhat. It was really only a matter of time, but Japan officially announced that they're going back to whaling to get whale meat and sell it to a small percentage of people who actually buy and eat whale meat in Japan. They never really stopped whaling. They were just pretending like they had stopped and saying it was a research vessel, and they were killing these whales to do research. It's a bad thing, certainly, and I think most citizens of Japan, if they weren't Japanese, would be up in arms complaining about it. But this is kind of the Shinzo Abe Abenomics plan, as I understand it. Is Shinzo Abe is the equivalent of a United States Republican who is all about big business. It's a bad move, particularly for the 2020 Olympics too, because it's something somebody can talk about. But they're going to get away with it too, because there's just so many other controversies going around the world, mostly started by the United States, that it's easy enough to have this happen and not have people really complain very often, very loud.
Elements guide me. Elements guide me.
Toil and trouble!
Looking at me.
Job's done.
Part of the whaling thing is sold as a matter of pride, which is which is how you get stuck into these traditional things, these regressive mentalities, is that, well, my father did this and I'm proud of my father, therefore it's a matter of pride that I be allowed to do this thing that my father in a previous generation was allowed to do, which is like just a lack of embracing that the world has changed in a nutshell. Alright, so now that we don't need any more overload cards, let's come over here and double check on this. Yeah, we just need to win 5 games. It will be way easier to come over and play Paladin and see if we can get up ranked. Moving on, Gametsu has a Crystar character trailer. So Crystar, I believe, is this weird PS4 game. It's coming out for PS4 and PC according to these tags, where the character is crying in the trailers. And this is the scene, this is the game that apparently the PlayStation 4 has already had to censor out. So, the bare bottom scene. Now, the idea of looking at an anime character crying, not particularly appealing. This is going to be a dark, spooky type game built around mental and emotional pain, partly, but also it looks like it's pretty much just a generic RPG in the same way. So it's probably trying to do some of the Alice Madness Returns style of presentation. Apparently this is not the trailer with the bare bottom, or I skipped through it. I wouldn't be surprised if there is just a brief bare bottom flash, but whatever. This is the game that was censored regardless, and there's still a lot that I would want to hear about this game because I don't know anything about it. So, well, we're going to wait and see if there's more to say about that, or if not, I wouldn't be surprised if there really isn't too much more to see or say.
Converting stored energy. Converting stored energy.
Gamma Sutra has an article here. Nintendo is, quote, investigating 5G and streaming tech, but refuses to, quote, chase trends. This is almost certainly a response from the shareholder Q&A. The, like, no duh. 5G makes sense if 5G gets really, really embraced in lots of places, including Japan, but just around the world in general. Inherently, I think 5G is not a particularly great technology because it doesn't go as far as 4G did. It's faster speeds if you're at shorter distances, but that's really the opposite of the focus that I would have liked to see them do. I would have liked them to stay on the same frequencies and go for longer distances that interact better with each other. What they're opting for here is they're hoping that 5G will work a lot like a Wi-Fi router that would just transmit signal inside someone's home and not put any signal outside of the house that would interfere with the neighbor's Wi-Fi router. And so they're hoping faster speeds with more in nodes and less interference will somehow equal a better experience. Where I think if you took a worldwide perspective, and if you were going to do something, you would probably do like the Tesla satellite things that they're trying to put up, where it's just a pretty decent Wi-Fi speed that is being delivered around the entire globe via low Earth orbit satellites, so it covers vast different distances of areas that don't have wires running to them or don't even have cell phone poles. When you get into major cities like Japan, Tokyo in particular, and you're on subways, there's a lot of walls, and 5G very possibly is not going to do well with all of the walls blocking the signals. But also, Nintendo is totally, obviously not going to chase trends. As far as streaming, yeah, if Microsoft could convince them to stream games directly to the Switch instead of making games that run on the Switch, they very possibly would have a better experience in the long run. Much better games. But that's way more complicated and way more internet-based than I think Nintendo would ever be willing to embrace. And if you had streaming game on the Switch, then it makes the Switch less playable when you're in a car, when your kids are in a car, and you're driving across country or something like that, where the signal would be spotty. So you would have to have something like a better version of 5G than what 5G probably is going to be, and streaming technology. So yeah, it really is asking for a ton of improvement or embracing of new technologies and hoping that they work. I think it's pretty obvious that Nintendo has their own plans and they're going to follow their own plans, and the shareholders are not going to really affect them. I've never seen Nintendo actually be affected by shareholders at all. They claim they have 100 years worth of money that they could that they've stockpiled so that they could continue to do business without making any new successes. If anything, if I was a shareholder, I'd be like, I would ask, how is the progress being made on what is it? On the next Metroid game, because that's the thing it seems like they've dropped the ball on. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article, developers in GTA clash over the impact of gray market keys on indies. So, what's interesting about this story is this is really a story of the developers' makings. I guess it is news if developers want to constantly bang the drum saying we hate GTA, we hate GTA. Here's a long article saying why we hate GTA or why GTA is bad. Like, yeah, okay. Then you're making news, you're banging that drum. On the other hand, if you're not adding any actual new facts, there's really nothing to say here, and it's really not something that I think needs to be re-reported on over and over again. Like, people that go to GTA probably aren't aware of the problems with G2A and willing to overlook them if they're still going to G2A. They say this started with a tweet with No More Robots founder and Gamasutra and former Gamasutra editor Mike Rose. So your Gamasutra is not even objective here. They shouldn't be reporting on it at all. And it's since spiraled into a change.org petition. Here's a thing that's way more important, is just nepotism and cronyism. Like, this person unethically made a company called No More Robots after being the video game editor for some amount of time and gaining relationships and becoming friends with game developers, because that's what all mainstream video game reporters do, is that they become buddies and friends with them instead of staying objective and staying alone. There should be no break here. If you're going to be a journalist and report about video games, at no point can you then go make video games. And it's not a put your money where your mouth is situation at all. This is a admission that, particularly in the video game industry, there is way too much cronyism and way too much I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine situations happening. Otherwise, though, yeah, the GTA story is just, you can try and make a story around it all you want. It's been heard. If people haven't heard the story, it's because they don't care and they're not following mainstream video game journalism anymore. Otherwise, people know about it and people don't care. And that's their prerogative too. If it's a buyer beware, but also it's a buyer try to find the best deal you can. If I go buy something at a pawn shop, while there probably is a significant amount of things at pawn shops that are stolen, it's really not my business or my fault if I buy something cheaper at that pawn shop and it turns out that it is stolen. I guess if somebody finds out, you have to give it back and then maybe chase after the pawn shop for your money back. But there's a difference between knowing that you're buying something stolen, which is illegal in most jurisdictions in the United States, and buying something that has a possibility of being stolen, but you don't know what percentage chance or possibility it is. At least in the United States, I think there's a difference there. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. Former Paradox CEO defends the studio's continuous DLC model as, quote, fair and balanced, a phrase that no one should ever use whatsoever since Fox News took it. So, Paradox continuous DLC. What is Paradox's? Which game are they talking about in particular? Isn't it?
Let me think.
I don't even know what game in particular they're talking about, but I feel like Paradox is one of those space games, and that's still in early access, but is also selling DLC. There definitely is a space game that's doing that. And this link just went to a tweet. I guess maybe if I look at Paradox's Twitter explanation. Let's see, they've got a website. We can use that to figure out what games in particular. It's just bad. Alright, here it is. In its model, it means games like Europa Universalis 4, which launched back in 2013, now has over 20 paid add-ons costing a variety of price points. Some people will be very happy with that concept, though. That's not,
Let me think.
if done well, not a bad way to continuously support your existing products. Particularly if your existing products really don't need any kind of update or visual upgrade. The better response, I would say, though, for the former Paradox CEO, who apparently doesn't even isn't the CEO anymore of Paradox Studios, so you really shouldn't be saying anything. Would be to just simply say, if you don't like the DLC, don't buy it. That's the whole point of DLC. Let's see. Vampire Bloodlines 2. I guess that would be the one that people are really afraid of, is if Vampire the Masquerade came out and then it had a constant DLC updates. On the other hand, Bloodlines 2 might be the new Skyrim, so if it did turn out to be the next new Skyrim, it would be rather cool for it to constantly have this kinds of updates and new DLC added to them. Although in Skyrim's case, it's usually free mods and not paid DLC. They also have a BattleTech game that they sell in Stellaris Ancient something and Imperator Rome being highlighted as the new releases and coming soon. Let's see. I'm clicking the browse button, and because I won't accept cookies, the browse button will not work on their website. Alright. I don't think on the face of it I can really complain too much about something that's just adding DLC. If you feel like the game has been chopped up and that's where all that DLC came from, then you have a legitimate reason not to buy the game in its original form, and then possibly reevaluate the purchase once that DLC comes out. The fact that there's no definitive edition, it sucks, certainly. If Borderlands 2, though, had just constantly released more and more DLC and not made Borderlands a pre-sequel, I think that would have been a lot better until they got to the point of Borderlands 3.
I will fight with
So
honor.
I could certainly have seen it working really nice if they had constantly added more DLC throughout the years. Moving on, we have a Gematsu article. Undead Darlings, No Cure for Love was shown at the Anime Expo 2019 teaser trailer. So I assume these are undead zombie girls. Not all zombies in anime are shown as green, grotesque characters. There was an anime that came out where it was zombies in a singing group, and I think that started a new trend. And since they're so trend-centric, there's something to this. Now, when you look at the art here, you're seeing green zombies that are way worse animated, so maybe these are live anime girls fighting the zombies. This mostly looks like a generic dungeon crawler, though. Doesn't look like there's anything amazingly special or interesting about it. It's just in the turn. In general, Gematsu has Anime Expo 2019 listed here with, I think, a full list of what's going to be shown and announced, or what has been shown or announced. Crunchyroll is going to have a panel. Interesting. So, I'm not expecting a ton of stuff from Anime Expo, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is 2 or 3 big, worth mentioning games, and maybe even a dozen just kind of mediocre anime games that get announced at Anime Expo. And it makes a lot of sense to start seeing more of this year in and year out, is that it's been maybe 3, maybe 4 weeks since the end of E3. If any anime game had been announced in E3, it would have been overshadowed by AAA games and their trailers. So now you have a much more interested market to show it at a anime show. And they've been doing the same with like Comic-Con, where they've been showing off video games at Comic-Con, Marvel comic book style games, and I think we'll see more of that too. I think Comic-Con in particular is probably itching to not be so comic book focused and more comic movie focused, comic figures focused, comic toys and collectibles focused, or comic video game focused. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Need for Speed World Offline mod lets you play a cancelled game. Let's see. This cancelled multiplayer game to hop back in allows people who... How would you have gotten the game though? I guess it was a game that was playable at one point, and then they just canceled it rather quickly. And I guess if a game is multiplayer only and is canceled, then, or shut down the servers, that's it. And that has been the growing and obvious problem with online only players for a long time.
Access denied. Converting stored energy.
TechRaptor has an article here. Exclusive Wide Right Games announced a closed alpha for Freedom Finger. Why TechRaptor is getting exclusive, I don't know. I don't really believe in exclusives as a way. If you're trying to disseminate news, getting exclusive is not in that idea. This is clearly sponsored more as much as it's exclusive. But that's what exclusive always meant, is that, hey, we're doing a favor for this specific journal site, so you give us a good initial show. If it had an E3 trailer, it wasn't a major secret. There's nothing here that looks particularly interesting in this game either. I really just wanted to rant against exclusive more than anything else. Next we have a TechRaptor article. Rumor, at least they're starting to label their articles. I guess that's helpful. Rumor, there will be 4 Last of Us 2 editions at launch. That's believable. PS games, PlayStation 4 games in particular, have been pretty bad about having 3-4 different editions. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a basic edition, a deluxe edition, a supreme edition, and then a collector's edition on top of that. So it's a rumor right now, but it's totally believable. I believe last recording on Gamatsu we saw the pencil drawings of the Shanti 5 Studio Trigger opening animation. It seems like the pencil drawings now have been colored in and animated, so we can actually show off the entire trailer entry. Shanti being the half genie girl who's fighting always against this pirate lady here, usually. And looks like there might be some new characters coming into the story. Or, I don't know, I haven't played the Shanti series, so these might be old characters. But, yeah, it looks like it's a standard Shanti game. And the Shanti games, I definitely want to cover them and play them. Studio Trigger animating the opening is possibly deceptive if you don't recognize and remember that often Japanese animation studios are hired to make openings for anime shows that they don't make the rest of the show. So the game itself will probably look way less linear than this. This is an artistic style for sure. Very sharp, long limbs and ears and sharp hourglass figure there.
I will fight with
Yeah,
honor.
she'll probably be much closer to like a 16-bit animated style that we've seen in previous Shanti games. And almost certainly it's going to come to the Switch and PC. Studio Trigger, though, is, I guess, getting a little bit more into video game animation because there is also a Kill La Kill game coming out, and Studio Trigger animated that too. They animated the anime of Kill La Kill. I'm not sure if they animated the game or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Game Sutra has an article. Keyboard Studios opens a recording studio for game localization in Brazil. It seems like Brazil is becoming a new market to focus on, particularly in video games and localization. I have been seeing over the past couple of years more and more games that claim to support Portuguese Brazil as a language on Steam.
Job's done.
So that I don't think anything fast will happen here, but eventually I do suspect Brazil will be the 4th or 5th language by default you pick, where you would make a game and localize it into like English and maybe Chinese, maybe Japanese, maybe German, and then you might start going to go Spanish at some point in there too. And after that, you might be tied between Portuguese, Brazilian, or French. Moving on, Gematsu has an article. Access games to localize Otome. Remember, that's Young Maiden titles for the Switch in 2020. So let's see, do we have a list of what these games are? So Code Realize, Guardian of Rebirth, Code Realize Future Blessings, Caller X Malice, Unlimited, Cafe Enchante, and Pio4A, which is the working title. Alright, that's a decent handful of visual novel games, but they do tend to come out pretty quickly. And if they're getting localized, that means they're coming to English, I would assume. And since this was announced at Anime Expo, yeah, they're coming to the West, so that's English. And I was saying earlier, yeah, I want to see more Otome style visual novels come to the West. Like if you have any young daughters these days, or soon to be teenage daughters, don't be surprised if they start getting into Otome visual novels as one of their favorite forms of games to play. I've seen more of these more cell phone games that act like Otome stories too. So there's definitely growing demand in the West for these things. We have a game here on Steam called Fruit Crawler. This is just Snake. It's just a low effort single screen Unity Snake game. We haven't seen a lot of single screen Unity puzzle games in a while. It's $6.99 English only. Nothing here worth mentioning. At this rate, it feels like I probably am not going to actually get all the victories I need. So I may have to play a little off screen. That's not going to be a big deal though. There is a new thing about Borderlands and shift codes that's interesting. You can now redeem gold keys online at borderlands.com. Just click the shift logo on the top of the page for help. Click that. So currently what I'm having to do is when I get a shift code like this for PC, I copy it into a blank notepad file, which means if I reset my computer, I probably am going to lose that code. And then I launch either Borderlands 2 or Borderlands the pre-sequel. Eventually this will also be Borderlands 3, but I don't own Borderlands 3 and it's a Epic Store exclusive right now for the first 6 months. So then you have to launch Borderlands 2 or the pre-sequel and put it in the app. The whole idea of the concept was to have people launch the game so they might actually play it. So inherently what they're saying is we've given up on caring about if you actually play the game when you launch it. We just want you to redeem the shift codes so that hopefully at some point you'll play it, which will be very helpful because that means no longer on my external secondary hard drive do I need to have Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel installed. This probably though also requires you to log in, if I was to guess. Let's see, because I don't see how you could go to borderlands.com and not have like a VIP account. Let's see. So under the website it says redeem code.
Your thirst for victory is formidable.
Yeah, you have to be part of the insider program, it seems. Right. Alright, so I'm gonna just paste this code in there.
I wonder.
So it said success. I don't know how that would have worked though. At what point did I tie Borderlands.com into my Steam account? Like that would be helpful certainly in the long run to not have that installed, but it is also a little weird, and it really is going against the general concept of the shift codes engine, which is to make people play more. Like if you don't even have to launch the app to get the keys, okay, fine. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. Universe Sandbox price is going up in the new future, says devs. Don't fall for this trick, I say. Particularly in this game, in the case of a game like Universe Sandbox, which was probably early access and has very little chance of ever being a polished product. But yeah, do not get strong-armed into buying a game. I got strong-armed personally into buying Shovel Knight, but I was also recommended to play Shovel Knight by an actual fan, so I did that because they said the price was going up. But don't be like me, don't fall for these tricks. Let them raise the price and then evaluate it at the new price once it's a finished product out of early access.
Converting stored energy.
TechRaptor has this article. We already talked about this. Hearthstone says card changes have nothing to do with China. Blizzard says, I agree. I think it has to do with a Islamic country in Sudan, or just SJWs being in charge of the art. I don't think it has anything to do with China, though. That's my personal opinion. I think it has to do with something else. Hearthstone has been in China, so it makes very little sense that they would have to change or censor their game. It makes a little bit of sense, but I just don't think that the censorship board is re-evaluating old games that often, or would look at a game that has already been kind of approved. But maybe I think they did say something along the lines of they were going to reevaluate old games to follow the new standards, but
Access denied.
I still don't really believe it.
Photonic burst.
I don't really see the benefit of Blizzard taking all the heat and saying it has nothing to do with China, when they could just say, oh yeah, it has to do with China. Like, I think all game companies forced to censor their games because of Chinese censorship should say it has to do with Chinese censorship and put it right on China, so it doesn't blow back on them. Next we have a game on Steam here called Song Beater Quite My Tempo, which this is just another one of clones of Beat Saber. Early access VR game for $13.49, English only, 30 achievements. I don't see any reason why you would want to buy Song Beater versus Beat Saber. Beat Saber is clearly a better choice. TechRaptor has an article here. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is targeting mid-July for Switch fixes. That game particularly runs bad on the Switch, from what I've heard. Wouldn't be surprised if every version of the game needs some touching up here and there. But whatever. Like, I don't know why you'd specifically want to have that game on the Switch anyways, other than the fact that it gives you portability. Portability at the expense of a lesser quality product. Next there's a game on Steam called The Prophecy Lies, which is an RPG Maker looking game. I have no interest in that. I've actually not seen too many RPG Maker games lately. $5.94 discounted, English only. I believe at this point that has that means we've done everything. TechRaptor has the same article. Zachtronics makes its entire library free to schools, some schools, public schools, and educational programs, which you have to send your name and title, your organization's name, title, and tax ID number, a link to something online that proves your affiliation with the organization, what games you want licenses for, how many computers the game will be installed on, where the computers will be located, how many students will have access to the game, how you plan to use the games, the curriculum as a reward, after school club, etc. An after school club is an interesting idea, certainly. Games are T-rated by the ESRB, but there may still be some objectionable content in them. I didn't even think... I think a lot of them probably shouldn't be rated even T, but they are complicated games, and that might have gotten them the T rating, certainly. Libretro has moved from the Mupin 64 Plus Libretro core to the Mupin 64 Libretro NX or Next core, and they're no longer working on the original core, which means Nintendo 64 emulation on the Raspberry Pi 4 will probably be better once it all gets working. And even on the older Raspberry Pis, the next version will probably get a little bit better, but probably not that much better. I think it is more of a hardware power and CPU power issue for Nintendo 64 emulation than it is coding. Although, it may be that the Nintendo 64 emulator is pretty badly coded too. It's newer and it requires a lot more work to get things working. TechRaptor has an article here. Torchlight is free on the Epic Games Store, and July 11th, Overcooked is free now. Torchlight is a good game if you're into getting games on the Epic Games Store. Getting that for free is a good, decent Diablo-esque game that is made from the original creators of Diablo. Although, arguably, at this point, playing Torchlight 1 and then Torchlight 2 doesn't really mean too much, because then there's another Torchlight that's being developed as like a mobile game, and it's not. And I think the team that made Diablo that went on to make Torchlight have now moved on to make something else, but I can't even remember what the something else is. Gamasutra here has this article. I think we already talked about this. Shovel Knight has surpassed 2.5 million sales. Might be running into some duplicate tabs. We have a game on Steam here called The End of an Age, Fading Remnants, which is a RPG Maker game. This is the first time I've ever seen anybody try to make a fake Steam cover, where they're just putting pictures here as an ESRB rating, and that's probably trademark infringement to use the Steam logo in such a way without permission. Anyways, this is $4.49 discounted, English only. No way a game worth playing. We've got about 4 or 5 more things to talk about. We have 1001 jigsaws, 6 magic elements. So whoever's making these jigsaw puzzle games is continuing to make these jigsaw puzzle games. $2.99 with a bunch of language supports. But no anime girls, no nudity, or anything like that in the jigsaw games, which is surprising. We really haven't seen anything too scantily clad so far today on Steam, but it does seem to come in bursts. Next we have Click Raid 2. I imagine the scantily clad games and adult games come in bursts because they are under more scrutiny and withheld for approval until a specific day. Click Raids 2 looks like it's a clicker game, although it's tagged as an RPG, massive multiplayer. Early access for $19.99, online only with in-app purchases. This does not look worth playing at all, either in single player or online. Let's see. And the winner of the longest name is finally on Steam. We have alternate Jake Hunter, Daedalus, Awakening of Golden Jazz, or in Japanese, the exact same title, / prequel story of Detective Sabaru Jingu Daedalus, the Awakening of Golden Jazz. I believe this is an adventure / visual novel game. There's been a lot of talk about this, so it definitely does deserve to be on the follow list. But yeah, I think it probably is just mostly an adventure game / visual novel. $39.99 is not the price I was expecting from it, but I guess because it's more of a niche product, I can understand why the Japanese would try to charge that much. Meanwhile, if you wanted the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy, you're paying $20.99 right now with 30% off. So that's probably a better use of your money. This will go on the follow list though. Honestly, I think only about 4 games have made it to the follow list today. idea what this is. Contra Collection came out. I don't think I really have any reason that I'd want to play the Contra Collection, though. Even if it is on PC, I'm not sure it is. Gamma Sutra has an article. Nintendo Switch Online now has over 10 million subscribers. It took Nintendo Switch a while to get to that milestone, though. But it was at 9.8 million 2 months ago. So to get 200,000 more subscribers, it took them 2 months. That's quite a lot. And I think part of the 9.8 million that got onto Nintendo Switch Online did it because of the Tetris Battle Royale game that came out. And Nintendo Online has yet to really be a good offering at all. It's not a good offering. It's cheap though. It's like only, I think, $10 a year or something like that, maybe $20. It's not going for a full $70. TechRaptor has an article here. Grid reboot is stuck in the pit stop until October. I think we already talked about this, but yeah, Grid has been delayed. It's better for a game to be delayed than released unfinished, I suppose, particularly a racing game. And then I mentioned this, and the Borderlands 3 cosplay guides, they've redone the art in all of the characters. So Maya was in a Hyperion yellow outfit, this exact same style, it's just black now. She's also in her hood, and her blue hair is, I think, slightly different. Maya, I believe, as a character, is going to be very de-emphasized in Borderlands 3. You're gonna see that very slowly that they have shifted some of the outfits to be a little less scantily clad, particularly Mad Moxie, and just have a lot more cloth and fabric on them in general. This whole cape thing was not something that I think Maya had in Borderlands 2. And the color palette is black because Hyperion yellow was a big deal in Borderlands 2. It's not so much a big deal now. They're giving a little accent of yellow. But as actual cosplay, this is so focused on the outfit, and that's not what most cosplayers do. Let's just be honest here. Actual cosplay players, more often than not, are showing off as much skin as they are fabric and costume design. Here, Mordecai is a great example of just ridiculousness of what they want you to depict him as. He's got almost all of his face covered. He's got a beard. He's got goggles. He's got fingertip to toe tip cloth everywhere. Like, there's not a bit of skin here at all. Why would you want to cosplay as Mordecai in the first place? It's silly. Really, really silly. But okay, you can go fingerless gloves. That's as much skin as Gearbox wants you to show, is your fingers. You know, a lot of clothing, I would argue, is about being comfortable in your own skin and being a little free to dress a fancier full. It's like going to the beach in a lot of ways, and yeah, if you went to the beach and you were covered head and toes, people would look at you weird. If you're cosplaying as Mordecai, I think people have a legitimate reason to look at you weird. So they've really redone Moxie in particular. First of all, I'm fairly certain she had tattoos on her chest and bust that have been removed in this animation in total. They are still going with what arguably I would say in this animation is unattractive, saggy cleavage. And there's one part that looks like it's a bra and the other part that looks like it's part of this bustier. But this is the most scantily clad you get. There's covering up most of both arms, and they have removed the underwear that was the main thing, or the side of her dress in Borderlands 2 was exposed to show the side of a like thong underwear, and that's gone. They've put this heart tattoo on the leg lower, and they've otherwise covered her up from her toes in very knee-high boots and different types of stockings. So it is just this gradual change of the characters and putting more and more stuff on it. I don't even think it's really a conservative, like we don't want to show skin idea so much, although she is also, I think, being depicted here with no scars really at all, where all the characters before had scars all over the place, and that was part of the art aesthetic. I think that's probably true for all the characters. I think this really is just somebody that doesn't understand fashion, or just the general concept that less is more. The Tina character as a teenager, they've taken the general concept of what she was depicted as in Borderlands 2 and aged her up a little bit. She's still got band-aids on her elbow, where I think she probably had some band-aids on her face before, and she's wearing these bunny ears. So she's oddly getting short sleeves where everybody else is getting long sleeves, but it's maybe just a bare midriff, barely a little bit of midriff exposed, and then just torn up and bandaged over jeans, and that's it. Just shoes. In particular, Tiny Tina in Borderlands 2 was living by herself and a little crazy, so her being able to even have this much quality of clothes that aren't torn up and ripped up is, I think, a little uncanonical, but maybe the Firehawk and the other main characters took her in and actually did a good job of caring for her. But the whole point is that Roland was kind of caring for her in the game, and Roland wasn't really bringing her into Sanctuary or doing anything like that. So yeah, if you're proud of your body and you want to show it off, your best bet is to do the female Psycho if you're female, or maybe see if you can get away with doing the male Psycho if you're female. Otherwise, you're not really close. And I would say the Psycho's outfits are actually way more thought out, with the tribal tattoos that were on all the characters, and the scars, and just the masks, and simplistic orange pants with knee pads. And you don't have to get crazy with it. Here they have a whole focus on different chest patterns and things like that. It'll be interesting to see if there aren't actually any darker skinned characters in Borderlands 3, and then the cosplay guide emphasizes that they want darker skinned characters in the game, or cosplaying. I don't know, maybe the cosplay locations, the events that, like Anime Expo, certainly would be a place where there's probably a lot of cosplay going on. Maybe they have just gotten to the point where they're particularly getting more and more strict about how much skin can be shown. But really, it's not Gearbox's or Borderlands' role to say, hey, the characters we're making, we want you to be wearing way too many layers and way too much clothing. And that's a harder cosplay too for somebody who just wants to do something generic. I wouldn't do a Borderlands 3 character because that's going to take a lot more time. That's something I guess I would need some outside information from people who actually follow the cosplay scene a lot more. Or I bet some of the events are getting a little bit more strict, but I wouldn't be surprised if there still are adults only midnight cosplay fashion shows going on at most of them. Let's see, I'm on the Humble Bundle site. It doesn't look like there's a new Humble Bundle. There's the monthly Humble Bundle and the PlayStation Games Humble Bundle, and that is that. And since today is Friday, what we'll do on Monday is we'll do the Asian account Tavern Brawl, and we can see that this will end in like 5 days, so we have plenty of time, and we otherwise have done every other account. So let me just go quickly through my Twitter feed and see if any news happened. Right now Anime Expo is going on, so like apparently 50 minutes ago the Gundam 40th anniversary panel started. So Mobile Suit Gundam 40th anniversary has a trailer, but I don't know if that means there's a real game. There's a Code Realize Guardian of Rebirth is coming to the West in December, which we kind of had already seen that. A game called Ghost Parade launches in November. We'll talk about that on Monday. It's not super surprising that there's no big news happening right now, as we're in between what easily could be a 4-day weekend for most people between the 4th of July and just Saturday and Sunday, where a lot of people come get Saturday and Sundays off. A game called Cafe Enchante, that's probably Pifore, is coming to the West in 2020. Now, a lot of these articles are things that were mentioned, but they didn't have images up. Gamatsu didn't, so we'll get some better pictures of them, but there's no reason to really talk about them right now. Let's see. There's a meme picture of Master Chief teaching, I think, one of the Disney princess characters from Tangled, I think, how to shoot a gun. It's cute and all. It's probably viral marketing, if I was to guess. So I wouldn't get super excited, and it's certainly not going to indicate that there's any kind of crossover potential for those two very different franchises. Anyways, that's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon. Also, remember, the Steam Summer Sale is still going on. It would be very much appreciated if you friended me on Steam and gifted me a game off my wishlist. That's a great way to one-time support my channel. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.